When I turned 65, I threw a party for the family. No one came. That same day, my daughter-in-law posted photos of everyone on a cruise. I just smiled. When they came back, I handed Clara a DNA test that made her go pale. I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached. I spent 3 weeks planning my 65th birthday party, 3 weeks choosing the perfect menu, decorating the dining room with fresh flowers, and calling everyone to confirm they'd be there. I even bought a new dress, navy blue with tiny pearl buttons, the kind Daniel always said made me look elegant. The table was set for 8, place cards written in my best handwriting. Daniel Johnson, little David who just turned 7, sweet Lily who's 5, my sister Margaret, her husband Samuel, and of course myself at the head of the table, where I could see everyone's faces as we eat together. But when I looked at the head of the table, I saw only my own reflection in the polished glass of the china cabinet. I tried to focus on the details instead. The way the candles flickered, the scent of rosemary chicken still drifting from the kitchen, the neat handwriting on each place card. I had written Daniel Johnson carefully, with pride. Then David Johnson, my sweet grandson who just turned 7, Lily Johnson, only 5, with her bright little giggle, and my sister Margaret Brown, her husband Samuel. It was supposed to be perfect, but the seats remained empty. By 8:15, I stopped pretending. I lowered my fork, staring at the food I could no longer taste. I picked up my phone again, scrawling in silence. No messages, not even a missed call. My thumb hovered over Daniel's name in my contacts. I almost pressed it. Almost. Then the screen lit with a new notification. A photo. I froze. Clara, my daughter-in-law, smiling beneath a wide-brimmed sun hat, Lily perched on her lap. Behind them, Daniel and David leaned against the railing of a cruise ship, the blue horizon stretching endlessly behind them. The caption read, "Family time is the best time, heart, #cruise life, #family first." My breath caught in my throat. I scrolled again, more photos. Daniel with his arm around Clara, David and Lily splashing in a pool, the 4 of them in front of a dinner buffet that must have taken the ship's chefs hours to prepare. Each picture was a dagger. Each smile proof of where they had chosen to be instead of here. The words "family first" blurred as my vision swam. I set the phone face down on the table and sat in the silence. At 9 o'clock, I blew out the candles and whispered to myself, "Happy birthday, Grace." The sound of my own voice was the loneliest thing I'd ever heard. Morning brought no relief. The table was still set, though the flowers had begun to droop. I packed the leftovers with stiff hands, sealing the meals in foil, lining them in the fridge. I carried one tray across the street to my neighbor, Mrs. Adebayo. "They didn't come?" she asked, eyes wide. I forced a smile. "Everyone was busy, that's all." She clucked her tongue. Don't let it trouble your heart, my sister. God sees." I nodded, though my chest felt hollow. 3 days later, Margaret called. "Grace, I've been thinking of you. How was the big party? I'm sorry Sam and I couldn't make it. His knee has been acting up again." My throat tightened. "There was no party, Maggie." "What do you mean no party?" "They were on a cruise. Clara posted pictures." A sharp silence filled the line. Then Margaret's voice burst through, trembling with fury. "On your birthday? Grace Johnson, if I ever doubted that woman, I was a fool. I never trusted her. Not once." "It wasn't just Clara," I said quietly. "Daniel went along with it." Margaret sighed, her voice softening. "Don't let it eat you alive, Grace, please. You're stronger than this." "I know," I said, and I meant it. Because I wasn't broken, not yet. That night, I pulled out the envelope. It had been sitting in my drawer for weeks, a nagging weight I'd tried to ignore. At first, I told myself it was silly, just paranoia, whispers in my head. But every time I looked at David's eyes, so different from Daniel's, the suspicion returned. Now, after the photos, after the humiliation, the envelope felt like a weapon in my hands. I opened it slowly, the paper crinkling. The bold print blurred before me. But I already knew the words. I had memorized them the first time I'd seen them. Paternity, excluded. Daniel Johnson was not David's biological father. I closed my eyes, steadying myself. Clara had stolen my birthday, but she had also stolen something far worse. I folded the paper again, sliding it back into the envelope. It wasn't time yet, but when the moment came, I would be ready. A week later, they returned. I heard the car before I saw them, laughter spilling out as the door slammed shut. I stood at the window, hidden by the curtain, watching Clara adjust her sunglasses, her skin bronzed from the sun. Daniel carried the luggage, David and Lily bounding up the steps with joy. The doorbell rang. I opened it, smiling as though nothing had happened. "Welcome home," I said warmly. "Grandma," David shouted, wrapping his arms around my waist. Lily pressed into me too, her curls tickling my cheek. My heart softened instantly. Whatever else was broken, my love for them was whole. "Did you miss me?" "Yes," they chorused, giggling. Clara stood behind them, her lips painted a perfect shade of coral. "It was a wonderful trip," she said breezily. "The children had such fun. You really should come with us next time, Grace." Her words dripped with sweetness, but her eyes were sharp. I held her gaze and smiled politely. "Perhaps I will, but for now..." I reached into the drawer by the door and pulled out the envelope and handed it to Clara. Clara's hand hovered above the envelope, her smile flickering for a fraction of a second before she recovered. "What's this?" she asked, her voice sweet but strained. "Something I think you should see," Grace replied calmly, though her pulse throbbed in her throat. Daniel, carrying the last suitcase inside, frowned. "Mom, what's going on?" Grace said nothing. She simply placed the envelope in Clara's hand. Clara looked at it, her fingers tightening. For a moment, she seemed ready to shove it into her bag and laugh it off, but Grace's steady eyes stopped her. With an exaggerated sigh, Clara tore it open. The room seemed to shrink as the paper slid free. David and Lily had already run down the hallway, their giggles echoing as they searched for their toys. Grace kept her eyes fixed on Clara's face, on the way her painted lips parted, her eyes widening as she scanned the words. Her knuckles whitened against the page. "What is this supposed to mean?" Clara's voice was sharp now, brittle like glass. Daniel stepped forward, reaching for the paper, but Clara jerked it away. Too late. Grace had already seen his confusion, the first flicker of doubt. "Daniel," Grace said softly, "read it." He took it gently from Clara's trembling fingers. His brow furrowed as he read the bold heading, Paternity Test Results. His eyes darted to the conclusion, and Grace saw his jaw tighten. "Excluded," he read aloud, the word heavy as stone. He looked up, his face pale. What is this, Clara?" Clara laughed suddenly, the sound brittle. "It's nothing. Some cruel trick. Grace must have ordered this behind our backs just to stir trouble." Grace straightened her shoulders. "Yes, I ordered it because I needed the truth, and now Daniel has it too." Daniel's eyes darted between them. "Clara, tell me this isn't true." But Clara's lips pressed into a thin line. The silence stretched, broken only by the faint hum of the refrigerator. Grace stood still, her hands clasped in front of her, watching her son wrestle with the truth. Finally, Clara spoke. Her voice was lower now, stripped of pretense. "Daniel, we were going through a difficult time. You were never home, always traveling for work. I was lonely. It was one mistake, one night. But I raised David as ours. I love him. You love him. That's what matters." Daniel staggered back a step, as though she had struck him. "One night? Clara, he's 7 years old. 7 years of lies." Clara's eyes filled with tears. Whether real or staged, Grace couldn't tell. "I did it for us, for our family. Do you think I wanted this? Do you think I planned it?" Grace's voice cut through the tension. "You planned enough to post pictures of my family smiling on a cruise while I sat alone on my birthday." Clara's head snapped toward her. "You had no right to interfere." Grace's jaw tightened. "No right? I am her grandmother, and I will not stand by while lies poison this family." Daniel dropped into a chair, his face buried in his hands. I don't know what to think. David is my son. I've raised him. Nothing changes that. But Clara," his voice broke, You lied to me. From the hallway came the sound of little feet pattering. David appeared, holding a toy truck, Lily trailing behind him. His innocent smile pierced the air like a blade. "Daddy, come play," David said eagerly. Daniel lifted his head, his eyes red. He forced a smile. "In a minute, buddy." The boy ran off again, blissfully unaware. Clara seized the moment, kneeling beside Daniel. "Don't do this, Daniel. Please, we have a family. Don't let your mother destroy it because of one mistake." Daniel looked at her as though seeing her for the first time. "This isn't about my mother. This is about you." The tension lingered long after they left Grace's house that night. Daniel had insisted on driving the children home while Clara sat silently in the passenger seat, her hands clenched tight in her lap. Grace stood at the window, watching the car disappear down the street. For the first time in years, she felt both vindicated and afraid. She had revealed the truth, but the storm was only beginning. The next morning, Margaret called again. "Well?" she asked immediately. "Did you show her?" Grace told her everything, the envelope, the look on Clara's face, the way Daniel's world had cracked open. Margaret whistled softly. "It's about time. That woman has slithered her way through this family for too long. What did Daniel say?" "He's broken," Grace admitted. "He loves those children, but now he doesn't know which way is up." "Then he needs you more than ever," Margaret said firmly. "Don't back down. Clara will twist this if she can." Grace closed her eyes. She could already feel the backlash brewing. Clara would not accept defeat quietly. That evening, her fears were confirmed. A car screeched to a halt outside, and moments later, Clara stormed through the door without knocking. Her eyes blazed, her posture rigid with fury. "How dare you?" she spat, standing in Grace's living room like an intruder. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" Grace remained seated, her hands folded calmly. "I revealed the truth, nothing more." "You've poisoned Daniel against me," she shouted. "He hasn't spoken to me since last night. He slept in the guest room. My marriage is falling apart, and it's your fault." Grace met her glare steadily. "Your marriage is falling apart because you built it on lies." Her lips trembled, her composure cracking. "If you think you're going to take my children from me, think again. I won't let you." For the first time, Grace rose, her figure tall and commanding. "I don't want to take them, Clara. I want to protect them from betrayal, from pain, from a mother who values appearances more than honesty." The words hung heavy in the air. Clara faltered, her face pale. She spun on her heel and stormed out, slamming the door so hard the frames rattled. Grace exhaled slowly, her heart pounding. The war had begun. Later that night, Daniel called. His voice was weary, frayed around the edges. "Mom, I don't know what to do. Clara won't talk to me. The kids keep asking why I'm sad. I feel like my whole life is a lie." Grace's voice softened. "Daniel, listen to me. Whatever Clara has done, those children are innocent. Don't punish them for her mistakes, but don't excuse her either. You deserve the truth. You deserve respect." There was silence, then a whisper. "I don't even know who I am anymore." "You're a father," Grace said firmly, "and you're my son. That hasn't changed." When she hung up, Grace sat quietly in the dim light of her kitchen, staring at the empty chair across from her. She had always imagined growing old, surrounded by family, laughter filling the house. Instead, she was a soldier in a battle she hadn't chosen. But as she traced the rim of her teacup, one thought anchored her. She had faced the truth, and she would not turn back. The next morning, Grace opened her curtains to find Daniel's car idling in the driveway. He didn't knock, just sat behind the wheel, staring straight ahead. Concern gnawed at her. She slipped on her slippers, tied her robe, and went outside. Daniel rolled down the window. His eyes were bloodshot, his hair disheveled. "Mom," he said, voice hoarse, "can we talk?" Grace nodded and climbed into the passenger seat. The air between them was heavy. "She says it doesn't matter," he muttered, gripping the wheel. "That David is mine no matter what the paper says. That blood doesn't define fatherhood. And maybe she's right. I love that boy. He is my son." Grace let him speak. She could feel his heart tearing itself apart. "But I can't stop hearing that word. Excluded. 7 years of being lied to. Every time I tuck him in, every time I call him son, she knew. She knew, and she let me look like a fool." Grace placed a hand on his arm. "Daniel, love doesn't make betrayal disappear. Loving David doesn't mean excusing Clara." He shook his head, anguish written across his face. "I don't know how to separate them. My love for him and my anger at her." Grace's heart twisted. "Then don't separate them. Love him, protect him, but hold her accountable. If you let this slide, you'll be teaching David that deceit is acceptable, that lies can be forgiven without change." Daniel's eyes glistened. "I don't want him to grow up broken, Mom." Grace squeezed his arm gently. "Then show him what truth looks like, even when it hurts." Back at Daniel's house, Clara sat at the kitchen table, her makeup flawless, her posture poised. But the tightness around her mouth betrayed her nerves. When Daniel entered, she greeted him with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Darling, we need to put this behind us. Think of the children. Do you want them growing up in a divided home?" Daniel leaned against the counter, arms folded. "Clara, you lied to me for 7 years." She eyes shimmered with tears. "Because I was scared. Scared of losing you. Scared of raising David alone. But you stayed. You loved him. Doesn't that prove we were meant to be?" Daniel's jaw clenched. "What proves we were meant to be is honesty, and you didn't give me that." Clara stood, moving closer, her voice low and urgent. "You won't believe the crazy stuff she said. Hear this. If you keep listening to your mother, she'll tear us apart. Is that what you want? To raise our children in bitterness?" Daniel closed his eyes, torn between the woman he had built a life with and the mother who had always told him the truth. Meanwhile, Grace sat at her dining table, the same one that had once been set for her birthday. The flowers were gone, but the weight of that night remained. She picked up her pen and began to write in her journal. What is a mother's role? To nurture? To protect? To tell the truth even when it hurts? My son is standing at a crossroads and Clara is pulling him with lies. If I stay silent, I'm complicit. If I speak, I risk breaking him further. But what choice do I have? Her hand shook slightly as she set the pen down. She thought of David and Lily, innocent in all of this. They deserved love, stability, honesty. Could Clara give them that? Or would her selfishness bleed into them too? Grace closed her eyes. She had made one promise long ago, to protect her family, whatever it took. And she would keep it. The following Sunday, Margaret and Samuel came over. Samuel brought Grace a basket of fresh bread, setting it on the counter as Margaret settled into the chair across from her. "You look tired," Margaret said gently. "Has Daniel spoken to you again?" Grace nodded. "He's torn. He loves those children. But Clara, she's twisting his mind, making him believe I'm the enemy." Samuel shook his head. "That woman's pride will be her downfall. She doesn't realize the truth has already started unraveling her." Margaret reached across the table, taking Grace's hand. "Don't lose faith. Daniel's eyes are open now. Once you see the truth, you can't unsee it. He'll find his way. Grace forced a smile, but doubt lingered. Clara was clever, and Daniel's heart was soft. That night, Grace's phone buzzed. A message from Daniel. "Mom, I need time. Please don't pushing. I'll figure this out." Grace stared at the words, her chest tightening. She wanted to rush over, to shake him free from Clara's influence. But she knew the decision had to be his. All she could do was hold her ground and wait. Still, the house felt unbearably quiet. Grace walked through the living room, her footsteps echoing. She paused at the framed photographs on the wall. Daniel as a boy, smiling wide with missing teeth. Margaret and Grace together at their parents' old home. David and Lily in Christmas sweaters 2 years ago, grinning in front of the tree. She touched the frame, her voice barely a whisper. Family is supposed to mean something. Loyalty, truth. Why is it always the ones we love most who cut us deepest? Grace's narration hung in the air, her voice turned toward the audience, not pleading, but inviting them to stand with her. You have followed me this far. You've seen the pain of betrayal and the courage it takes to face the truth. And if you've ever felt alone, if you've ever been hurt by the ones you trusted most, then you understand me. Don't just watch this story in silence. Stay with me, support me, subscribe, like, and share this, not for me, but so no one else feels like they're fighting their battles alone. Every click, every comment reminds me that I'm not invisible, that my story matters, that we matter. Her eyes shimmered, not with weakness, but with resolve. And trust me, the story is just beginning. The days following Clara's outburst passed in uneasy silence. Grace went about her routines, tending her small garden, baking bread on Fridays, calling Margaret each evening. But beneath the surface, a storm churned. Daniel's messages grew shorter, more hesitant. He answered her calls with sighs, his voice carrying exhaustion more than anger. Grace knew the weight of his turmoil was dragging him down, and Clara was feeding that weakness. One evening, as Grace prepared dinner, her phone buzzed. Daniel's name lit the screen. "Mom, Clara doesn't want the kids coming over right now. She thinks it's confusing for them." Grace's hand froze on the spoon she was holding. "Confusing?" she repeated. "Daniel, I am their grandmother. My home is not confusing."
She just thinks it might be better until things settle down. His tone was apologetic, almost pleading. "Please don't make this harder." Grace's voice sharpened. "Harder? Daniel, they are my blood. You cannot erase me from their lives because your wife feels guilty." He didn't reply. The silence stretched, and finally he muttered, "I'll call you later," before hanging up. Grace set the phone down slowly, her hand trembling. The stew on the stove bubbled over, but she didn't notice. "I hope you're ready for what happens next. But hey, have you subscribed and liked it yet?" The next morning, Margaret arrived unannounced, carrying a bag of groceries. "You look pale," she said, bustling into the kitchen. "What happened?" Grace told her, every word. Daniel's excuses, Clara's control, the threat of being cut off from the children. Margaret's face flushed with fury. "Oh, that woman. She's tightening her grip. She knows she's slipping, so now she's using the children." Grace pressed her hands together, her voice low. "What if it works, Maggie? What if I lose them? First my birthday, now this. How many battles can I fight before I'm too tired?" Margaret took her hand firmly. "You don't dare talk like that. You are Grace Johnson. I've watched you hold this family together through storms worse than this. You won't give up now." Samuel, who had been quiet, finally spoke. "If Daniel is blinded, then maybe it's time you shined a light for the children themselves. They'll see who you are, Grace. They'll know where love truly is." Grace's heart ached. They're too young to understand betrayal, but they understand love, and I'll give them that, no matter what Clara does. That weekend, Grace decided to act. She baked Lily's favorite lemon cake and bought a toy truck for David. She placed them carefully in a basket and drove to Daniel's house. Clara answered the door, her smile razor-sharp. "Grace, what a surprise." "I came to see my grandchildren," Grace said evenly, holding up the basket. Clara tilted her head. "Daniel isn't home, and the children are napping. You'll have to come back another time." Grace's jaw tightened. "Clara, don't do this." But Clara leaned against the doorframe, lowering her voice to a venomous whisper. "You should have left well enough alone, but no, you had to meddle, and now you've turned Daniel against me. Against us. If you think I'll let you poison my children against me, you're mistaken." Grace's hand tightened around the basket handle. "They are not just your children, Clara. They are mine, too." Clara's smile widened. "Not according to the paper you love to wave around." The words cut deep, but Grace stood her ground. "Blood or no blood, I am their grandmother, and no test can take that from me." Clara's eyes narrowed. For a moment, Grace thought she might slam the door in her face, but then a small voice came from behind her. "Grandma!" Lily stood in the hallway, rubbing her eyes, her curls tangled from sleep. When she saw the basket, her face lit up. "Cake! Yes, sweetheart, lemon cake for you and David." Clara stiffened, but Lily had already rushed forward. Grace knelt, hugging her tightly, inhaling the soft, warm scent of childhood. Then David appeared too, dragging his toy truck. "Grandma!" he shouted, bounding toward her. Grace's arms opened wide. For a moment, it was everything she had longed for. But Clara's voice cut the reunion short. "All right, that's enough. Back to your rooms, both of you." The children protested, but Clara's glare silenced them. With downcast eyes, they shuffled away. Grace rose slowly, her chest heavy. She handed the basket to Clara. "Tell them it's from me," she said quietly. Clara took it without a word and shut the door. That night, Grace sat alone in her living room, her heart aching with emptiness. She had seen their faces, held them close, but Clara's shadow hung heavy between them. Margaret called and Grace confessed her fear. "What if she turns them against me? What if they grow up believing I'm the villain?" Margaret's voice was steady. "Then you keep showing up. You keep loving them. Lies fade, but love leaves a mark. They will remember." Grace wiped her eyes, nodding though Margaret couldn't see. Days passed, and Daniel finally returned to her house. He looked thinner, weary. He sat at the kitchen table where his birthday place card had once rested. "Mom," he said quietly, "Clara's threatening to leave. She says if I don't cut ties with you, she'll take the kids." Grace's breath caught. "And what will you do?" Daniel's eyes filled with tears. "I don't know. I don't want to lose them, but I can't lose you either." Grace reached across the table, gripping his hands. "Son, listen to me. Love built on lies cannot survive. If she leaves because you stand for truth, then let her go. But if you sacrifice truth for her, you'll lose everything. Your children, your peace, even yourself." Daniel buried his face in his hands, trembling. Grace held on, whispering softly, "You are not alone." As the chapter drew to a close, Grace's voice drifted again, not only to Daniel, but to all those listening. Maybe you've been here too, torn between truth and love, betrayed by someone you trusted. If you have, then you understand my heart. Don't walk away now, stay with me. Subscribe, like, share the story so others know they're not alone either. Because when people abandon you, sometimes strangers become your family. And together we can find the strength to keep going. Her eyes lifted toward the night sky along the window, a single tear glistening as it rolled down her cheek. And trust me, the hardest choices are still to come. The air around the Johnson family grew heavier with each passing day. Grace could feel it even from her quiet home, where the silence pressed on her like a weight. Daniel's visits became rare, each one leaving her with more questions than comfort.
One evening, she found herself sitting at her kitchen table, staring at her phone. She considered calling him, but stopped herself. If Clara answered, the conversation would be twisted before Daniel even heard her voice. Clara's talent for poison lay not in what she said, but in how she said it, weaving half-truths and guilt into threads strong enough to bind him. Still, Grace's heart ached. The children's laughter seemed like a memory slipping further and further away. "Stay with me now." So a week later, Margaret insisted Grace come with her to Sunday service. "You can't sit in this house forever," Margaret said firmly. "You need strength, and church is where we've always found it." Grace agreed reluctantly.
She dressed simply, tying her hair back, and let Margaret drive. As they walked through the church doors, Grace felt dozens of eyes turned toward her. Whispers followed, not cruel, but curious. Word had spread. Clara's version of events had found its way into the community. "Poor Daniel, what a mess," someone murmured. Grace lifted her chin. She would not bow her head to gossip. During the service, she prayed not only for herself, but for Daniel and the children. "God," she whispered, "give them clarity, open their eyes, let them know the truth without hating the truth teller." When the final hymn ended, Margaret slipped her hand into Grace's. "See, you're stronger than you think." But Grace's eyes burned as she thought of the empty seat beside her. Once, Daniel had sat there too. That afternoon, Grace returned home to find a small envelope on her doorstep. No name, no return address. Her stomach tightened as she picked it up. Inside was a photo. David standing at a school event holding a paper star with the words, "My dad is my hero," written across it. Beside him, Clara beamed at the camera. Daniel was nowhere to be seen. On the back, in Clara's neat handwriting, were 5 words. "He doesn't need you anymore." Grace's hand shook. For a moment, she thought of tearing it in half, but instead, she tucked it into her drawer next to the DNA test. Proof of Clara's cruelty. The next day, Daniel came by. His shoulders slumped, his face weary. "She's threatening to take them away," he confessed, collapsing into a chair. "She says if I choose you, she'll leave and fight for custody." Grace steadied her voice. "And what do you want, Daniel?" His hands gripped his knees tightly. "I want peace. I want my children to grow up happy, but every choice feels like tearing my heart in half." Grace leaned forward. "Peace built on lies isn't peace, son. It's surrender." He buried his face in his hands. "I don't know if I'm strong enough." Grace reached across the table, her hand warm over his. "Then lean on me. Lean on the truth. Even if it hurts now, it will set you free." A few days later, Grace received an unexpected call. "Grandma," Lily's small voice chirped through the line. Grace's heart leapt. "Lily, darling, how are you?" "I miss you," Lily whispered. "Can you come over?" Before Grace could answer, Clara's voice cut in sharply. "That's enough, Lily. Give me the phone." The line went dead. Grace sat frozen, tears sliding silently down her cheeks. Clara could keep her away physically, but not forever. The children's love was still there, untainted and true. That weekend, Margaret and Samuel visited again. Margaret cooked while Samuel fixed a broken hinge on the door. They filled the house with warmth, laughter, and the sound of family, the sound Grace longed for. Over dinner, Margaret spoke firmly. "You mustn't give up, Grace. Clara may have Daniel twisted around her finger, but she can't control the children's hearts forever. They know who loves them." Grace nodded, her voice quiet but resolute. "I'll wait as long as I have to, but I will not disappear from their lives." Samuel raised his glass. "To truth, then, however painful it may be." They clinked glasses, and for a brief moment, Grace felt hope. One evening not long after, Daniel brought the children by unexpectedly. Grace's heart soared as she opened the door to find David clutching his toy truck and Lily holding a crayon drawing. "We wanted to see Grandma," Lily said shyly, handing her the picture. It was of them 3 holding hands, smiles stretching across their stick figure faces. Grace knelt and hugged them both tightly. "You don't know how much I've missed you." Daniel lingered in the doorway watching, torn between relief and guilt. "Clara doesn't know I'm here," he admitted quietly. "She'd lose her mind if she found out." "Then let her," Grace said simply. For 2 hours, the house was alive again. They ate cookies, played board games, and laughed until the walls seemed lighter. When it was time to leave, Lily hugged her tightly. "Don't worry, Grandma," she whispered. "I'll always love you." Grace held her close, tears in her eyes. "And I'll always love you, my darling." That night, as Grace sat in the quiet after their visit, she looked at the drawing Lily had given her. She traced the little stick figure smiles with her fingertip. Her voice softened, drifting toward the listeners of her story. "Do you see now?
this isn't just my fight. It's every parent's, every grandparent's, every person who has ever loved someone enough to fight for them. Betrayal is cruel, but love is stronger. And if you've walked this far with me, don't stop now. Like, subscribe, share this story because your voice keeps me going. And tell me in the comments, have you ever had to fight for someone you love? She leaned back in her chair, the drawing resting on her lap.
Because the hardest battles aren't against strangers, they're against family. And those are the ones that decide who we truly are. The morning sun crept through the blinds as Grace sat at her kitchen table with a cup of coffee she could not taste. Her phone buzzed again, another message from an old friend at church. "Heard about what's going on, Grace. Praying for you. Stay strong." Grace's stomach twisted. Clara's whispers were spreading like wildfire. What had once been private pain was now the subject of hushed conversations in pews and grocery store aisles. When she finally called Margaret, her voice trembled. "She's poisoning the whole town against me. Now I'm the one they look at with pity, as if I'm the problem." Margaret's response was sharp. "That woman thrives on performance. Let her gossip. People may listen to her now, but truth has a way of surfacing. You just hold your head high." Grace sighed. "It's easier said than done when you feel the walls closing in." Meanwhile, Clara was staging her own war. At Daniel's office party, she leaned in close to his colleagues, her voice dripping with carefully measured sorrow. "Grace means well, but she's old and confused. Sometimes she says things that aren't true. I think it's just loneliness, but it's hurting us." Daniel overheard, his jaw tightening. Later in the car, he said quietly, "You didn't have to say that about Mom." Clara touched his hand. "Darling, I only said it so people wouldn't think less of you. Do you want everyone knowing our private matters? It's humiliating." Daniel turned away, staring out the window. A part of him knew Clara was twisting the truth again, but another part of him, tired, drained, longed for the quiet she promised. At home, Grace busied herself with chores, but her thoughts kept circling back to one conclusion. Clara would not stop, not until she had stripped Grace of every thread of dignity. She pulled the DNA envelope from her drawer again, laying it flat on the table beside the cruel photograph that Clara had left on her doorstep. Together, they told a story Clara could never escape, no matter how many lies she spread. Grace whispered to herself, "Let her dig. Every shovel of dirt she throws will only bury her deeper." 2 days later, Daniel arrived unexpectedly. His face was pale, his voice tight. He said, "Mom, Clara's talking about filing for separation." Grace's chest tightened. "And custody?" Daniel nodded slowly. "She said if I don't choose her fully, if I keep letting you into our lives, she'll fight for full custody of the kids." Grace's breath caught. "Daniel, you can't let them use them as weapons." He sank into a chair, his hands trembling. "I don't know what to do. I can't lose my children, but I can't live with the lies anymore either." Grace knelt in front of him, gripping his hands firmly. "Then fight for them with truth. If she takes you to court, this," she tapped the envelope, "is your shield. Lies may wound, but truth protects." Daniel stared at her, his eyes haunted. "But what if the court doesn't care? What if they see me as weak? What if they take them away?" Grace's heart ached, but her voice was steady. "You are not weak, Daniel. You are a father. And a father who stands for truth is stronger than any lie." Clara, however, had her own strategy. One evening, she invited Daniel's closest friends to dinner. Over wine and dessert, she performed her part flawlessly. "Grace is difficult," she confided, her voice breaking just enough to seem genuine. "She means well, but she doesn't know when to stop. It's tearing Daniel apart. I just want to protect our children from the drama." Her friends nodded sympathetically. By the end of the night, Clara had painted herself the victim, Grace the villain. But Daniel noticed something Clara did not. One friend, Michael, gave him a look across the table, a look that said, "I don't buy this." Later, Michael pulled him aside. "Daniel, be careful. I've known your mom for years. She's no liar. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." Daniel drove home that night with Michael's words echoing in his head. For the first time in weeks, he felt a sliver of clarity. Back at Grace's house, Margaret and Samuel visited again. Over tea, Samuel spoke gravely. "Clara is burning every bridge she has. She may not see it now, but eventually people will realize who's telling the truth." Grace nodded slowly. I just worry about the children. They're too young to understand, but one day they'll look back. What will they remember? Their grandmother fighting for them or their mother's lies? Margaret's eyes softened. They'll remember your love, Grace. Love leaves a deeper mark than lies ever can. That night, Grace prayed aloud, her voice trembling but resolute. Lord, give me strength. Help Daniel see clearly, protect the children from this storm, and when the time comes, let the truth be undeniable. As she whispered into the quiet, she realized she was no longer just reacting to Clara. She was preparing for the moment when Clara's lies collapsed under their own weight. The days after Daniel's late-night confession felt like living in the eye of a storm. Grace went about her routines with deliberate calm, watering her plants, ironing her clothes, kneading dough for bread, but every ordinary act carried a weight. Somewhere beyond her quiet walls, Clara was plotting, and she knew it in her bones. And soon enough, proof arrived. One Tuesday afternoon, a thick envelope slid through her letterbox. The return address bore the name of a family law firm. Grace's heart thudded as she tore it open. Inside was a letter, crisp and formal. Clara had filed for legal separation. Worse still, she was seeking sole custody of David and Lily. Grace's knees nearly gave way. She clutched the table for balance, reading the words again and again. Clara's claim was simple. Grace was a toxic influence, manipulating Daniel, confusing the children. Clara painted herself the victim, the sole protector of their stability. How on earth could she even dare say this? Well, let's go on. Tears burned in Grace's eyes, but beneath them something hotter sparked. Anger. Clara had crossed a line. It was no longer whispers or locked doors. She was trying to sever Grace from the children completely. Grace folded the letter, her hands shaking, and placed it next to the DNA results in her drawer. 2 pieces of paper. 1 lie, 1 truth. They would collide soon enough. That evening, Daniel appeared at her door. His face was drawn, his eyes shadowed. I didn't know she'd done it, he admitted as soon as she let him inside. She didn't tell me she was filing. I found out when the papers arrived this morning. Grace's voice trembled, but she held her ground. Daniel, she wants to erase me from your children's lives, from your life. You can't let this happen. He sank into a chair, running his hands through his hair. I feel like I'm drowning. Every time I think I can see the surface, she pulls me under again. Grace reached across the table, gripping his hand. Then stop letting her pull you. Swim, Daniel. Fight back. He looked at her with haunted eyes. And if I lose them? Her heart broke at the fear in his voice. She squeezed his hand firmly. Then you fight harder. You don't stop because you're scared. You stop when you know you've done everything to protect them. Meanwhile, Clara played her part in public flawlessly. At the grocery store, she lingered in the aisles, making sure to sigh heavily as neighbors asked how she was doing. "Oh, it's been hard," she'd reply, her eyes glistening. "Daniel's mother means well, but she just doesn't know when to stop. It's tearing our family apart." Whispers spread. Sympathy leaned toward her, but in the shadows, doubt was growing too. People who had known Grace for decades found it hard to reconcile Clara's story with the woman they trusted. Clara didn't notice. She was too consumed with her performance. Grace found her strength in smaller moments. One Saturday, Daniel brought David and Lily over for a quick visit. Clara was away with friends, and Daniel had taken the chance to drive them across town. The children burst through the door like sunshine. David clutched his toy truck, while Lily carried her latest drawing, a stick figure family with 3 people holding hands. Grace's chest tightened when she saw it. Only 3. "Where's Mommy?" Grace asked gently. Lily shrugged. "I didn't draw her. Just me, Daddy, and you." Grace hugged her close, her tears hidden in her curls. For 2 precious hours, they laughed, ate cookies, and played in the backyard. Grace stored every second in her heart like treasure. When it was time to leave, Lily clung to her. "Don't worry, Grandma. We'll come back." Grace kissed her forehead. "I'll be waiting, sweetheart." Later that night, Margaret called. Grace told her about the letter, about Clara's custody claim. Margaret's fury blazed down the phone line. "She's desperate, Grace. That's what this is. Desperation. She knows the truth is closing in." Grace sighed. "But desperation makes people dangerous." "Then you be stronger," Margaret urged. "You've already outlasted her lies. Now you outlast her schemes." Grace sat in the dim light of her kitchen after hanging up, the papers spread before her. The DNA results, the custody claim. 2 battlegrounds waiting to clash. She whispered to herself, "You can't take them from me, Clara. You can't erase me." Her voice hardened, not without erasing the truth first. Across town, Clara sat at her vanity, reapplying lipstick in the mirror. Her reflection smiled back at her, flawless, composed. But beneath the surface, cracks were spreading. She could feel Daniel slipping, Grace tightening her hold. She pressed the lipstick harder, muttering to herself, "If she wants war, she'll get war." You've seen the lies, the threats, the battles fought in silence. And now the fight is moving beyond whispers, into courts, into papers, into choices that will shape my family forever. Will Daniel finally stand for truth, or will Clara's lies win another round? Stay with me. Subscribe. Share this story. And don't miss what comes next, because the next chapter will reveal who's truly willing to risk everything. Grace woke to the sound of her phone buzzing on the nightstand. It was Daniel, his voice strained. "Mom, Clara's lawyer served me today. They want to move fast. Custody hearings, mediation, all of it." Grace sat up, her chest tightening. "Did you speak to your lawyer?" "I don't even know where to start." "She's saying you're interfering, that you're filling the kids' heads with confusion. She's painting you as toxic." Grace's jaw clenched. "She's using me as her shield. If she can discredit me, she thinks she can cover her lies. But Daniel, the truth is on our side." He sighed. "I wish I believed it would be enough." That morning, Grace called Margaret and Samuel to her house. The 3 of them sat at the kitchen table, papers spread before them. "This is war now," Samuel said grimly, adjusting his glasses as he scanned the custody documents. "Clara's not just playing with feelings anymore. She's playing with the law." Margaret shook her head. "What kind of mother drags her children through court just to protect a lie?" "The kind who's terrified of being exposed," Grace answered quietly. Samuel tapped the DNA test. "This is your weapon, but it will cut both ways. Are you ready for what happens when this becomes public?" Grace hesitated. She pictured David's wide smile, Lily's innocent eyes. Would they be able to understand? Could she live with being the reason their family shattered in court?
Then she remembered the photo Clara had left on her doorstep, the cruel handwriting. "He doesn't need you anymore." Grace straightened her shoulders. "Yes, I'm ready." Meanwhile, Clara prepared her case with ruthless precision. In her lawyer's office, she rehearsed her lines, her voice trembling at all the right moments. "She's overstepped," Clara said, pressing a tissue to her eye. "Grace is obsessed with control. She's trying to tear my family apart because she can't stand not being the center of it anymore." Her lawyer nodded, scribbling notes. "We'll emphasize that you've been the primary caregiver, that Grace is manipulative, disruptive." Clara exhaled, her mask of sorrow flawless. Inside, though, her thoughts burned. If Daniel thinks he can side with her, he'll regret it. This is getting crazy, don't you think? Wait, how do we get here? Somebody give me a quick recap. I've lost my train of thoughts. Comment that below. Daniel found himself caught in the middle. At work, he couldn't concentrate. At night, he couldn't sleep.
He'd look at David, asleep with his toy truck clutched tight, or at Lily curled up with her stuffed bunny, and feel his heart crack. He thought about what Clara had done, the lie that started everything, and about his mother who had forced the truth into the open. Two women pulling him in different directions, and he, stretched thin, wondered how much longer before he snapped. One Saturday, Daniel brought the children to Grace's house under the excuse of spending time with Grandma. The moment the children ran through the door, Grace felt life return to her home. David sprawled on the floor with his truck, making engine noises, while Lily drew pictures at the table. Grace sat with Lily. "What are you drawing today?" Lily beamed. "A family, but this time everyone's there. Daddy, me, David, you, even Mommy." Grace's heart softened. She traced the little stick figures with her finger. "That's beautiful, sweetheart." David suddenly looked up. "Grandma, do you and Mommy hate each other?" The question cut through the room like a blade. Daniel's head snapped toward them, his face pale. Grace inhaled slowly. "No, sweetheart. I don't hate anyone. But sometimes grown-ups make mistakes, and when they do, it hurts. But love never goes away." David considered this, then nodded solemnly. "Okay, I love you." Grace pulled him close, tears brimming in her eyes. That night, after the children had gone to bed, Daniel stayed behind. He sat at the kitchen table, staring at the DNA test Grace had laid before him. "I've looked at this paper 100 times, and every time I feel sick, not because of David, but because of Clara. She let me believe a lie. She let me raise him without telling me the truth, and now she's dragging us through court to cover it up." Grace touched his hand gently. "Then stop letting her define the story. You know the truth. Don't let fear silence you." He swallowed hard. "If I go against her, she'll destroy me." Grace met his eyes. "She's already trying. The only way to survive is to stand." The court date loomed closer. Grace dressed carefully the morning of the first hearing, her navy dress buttoned neatly, her pearl earrings catching the light. She stood before the mirror, studying the woman looking back at her. Not broken, not bitter, ready. At the courthouse, Clara swept in. Wearing a cream suit, her hair sleek, her smile practiced, she looked every inch the wronged wife. Daniel trailed behind her, shoulders slumped, avoiding Grace's eyes. When the judge called the case, Clara's lawyer spoke first, painting Grace as interfering, manipulative, and unfit for influence in the children's lives. Clara dabbed her eyes with the tissue at the right moments. Grace's lawyer then stood, laying the DNA test gently on the table. "Your Honor, this case is not about interference. It is about truth. And the truth is this: David Johnson is not biologically Daniel Johnson's child. Clara has concealed this for 7 years. Grace Johnson did not create this problem. She revealed it." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Clara's face paled, then flushed crimson. Daniel bowed his head, shame flooding him. The judge leaned forward. "This changes matters significantly. Custody disputes will be weighed carefully, but this court cannot ignore the evidence presented." Grace exhaled, her hands trembling beneath the table. The truth was out now, not whispered behind closed doors, but spoken openly for all to hear. Clara's mask cracked. She turned towards Grace, her eyes blazing with fury. "This isn't over," she hissed. That night, Grace sat on her porch, watching the sunset bleed into the horizon. Margaret sat beside her, a comforting presence. "You were brave today," Margaret said softly. "I wasn't brave. I was desperate," Margaret replied. "Desperation and courage are closer than you think. You showed Daniel, the children, the whole world, that truth matters, that lies can't rule forever." Grace's eyes glistened. "I just hope it was enough. You've seen what lies can do. You've seen the damage they leave behind, and now you've seen what it costs to stand for truth. But tell me, what would you do if you were in my shoes? Would you protect the children at all costs, even if it meant shattering the family? Or would you stay silent to keep the peace, knowing the lie was still alive?" Her eyes hardened, her tone edged with quiet fire. "And tell me this, do you think Clara deserves to keep those children after what she's done? Or should the truth strip her of everything she's tried to protect? Write it in the comments.
I want to know how far you would go if betrayal lived under your roof. The courthouse echo lingered in Grace's ears long after she returned home. The judge's voice, the gasps from the crowd, Clara's furious hiss. It all clung to her like smoke. She poured herself tea but could barely sip it. Her hands trembled too much. The truth was finally out, and though she had won the battle of exposing it, the war had only grown more dangerous. David didn't come that night. Grace waited, the porch light glowing against the dark, but his car never appeared. Instead, she sat with Margaret, who had insisted on staying. "You did the right thing," Margaret said, patting her hand. "Clara will rage, but her mask is slipping. The world has seen it." Grace stared into the distance. And what about David? He looked like a broken man in that courtroom. I revealed the truth, but at what cost? Margaret's voice softened. "At the cost of his chains, Grace. You've set him free. Whether he walks away from them is his choice now." Across town, Clara stormed through her house, her heels striking the floor like gunshots. "How dare she?" she hissed, pacing the living room. "How dare she humiliate me in front of everyone?" Daniel sat on the couch, his hands clasped, silent.
Oh, well, hold up. I've been saying David. Oh, I was foggy.
"Say something," Clara snapped, her voice sharp enough to cut. "Are you just going to let her ruin us? Destroy everything we built?" Daniel finally raised his head. His eyes were red, his jaw tight. "She didn't ruin us, Clara. You did. You lied to me for 7 years." Clara froze, then scoffed. "I lied because I loved you, because I didn't want to lose you." "You lied because you didn't trust me," Daniel shot back. "You chose deceit over honesty. And now I don't even know who you are." Clara's lips trembled, but her anger quickly returned. "If you walk away from me, Daniel, I swear you'll regret it. I'll take the children, and you'll never see them again." Daniel stood, his voice low but steady. "You won't, because no matter what else, I am their father, and you can't erase that." The next day, Daniel arrived at Grace's house with David and Lily in tow. The children ran inside, their laughter filling the rooms like sunshine breaking through storm clouds. Grace embraced them, her heart aching with relief. She turned to Daniel, searching his face. "Are you all right?" she asked softly. He exhaled, looking years older than he had days before. "I don't know, but I couldn't stay there last night, not after what happened." Grace guided him to the table, pouring tea as if the simple act could anchor them both. "You were brave in court. I know it wasn't easy hearing it all out loud." Daniel rubbed his temples. "It felt like the whole world saw me as a fool. A man raising another man's child, blind to it the whole time." Grace reached across, holding his hand. "No one sees you as a fool. They see you as a father, and that is something no lie can erase." David tugged at Daniel's sleeve, proudly holding up his toy truck. "Daddy, look! Grandma fixed it for me." Daniel smiled faintly, watching his son's joy. His chest ached. Whatever Clara had done, David was still his boy. And nothing, not paper, not courtrooms, not Clara's venom, would change that. Clara, meanwhile, worked furiously to reclaim control. She called friends, neighbors, anyone who would listen, spinning her story again. "She twisted everything," Clara insisted over the phone. "Grace has always been jealous. She couldn't stand that Daniel chose me. This is her revenge." But this time her words didn't land as smoothly. Whispers began to shift. Some sympathized, yes, but others frowned, remembering Grace's quiet strength over the years. The seeds of doubt were sprouting. Later that week, Grace was startled when the children asked a question that pierced her deeper than anything Clara had said. "Grandma," Lily whispered as she sat beside her. Are Mommy and Daddy going to stop loving each other? Grace swallowed hard, smoothing Lily's curls. Sometimes, sweetheart, when people make big mistakes, it hurts their love. But that doesn't mean they stop loving you. You will always be loved. David frowned. But if Monty's mad at you, do we have to be mad too? Grace's eyes filled with tears. She pulled them close, her voice breaking. No, my darlings. You don't ever have to be mad at me. Your love is yours to give, and I will always love you no matter what. Daniel, listening from the doorway, wiped his eyes quietly. For the first time, he saw the cost of Clara's choices, written not in court papers, but in the innocent questions of his children. Grace confided in Margaret later that evening. What will they remember, Maggie? The fights, the lies, the courtroom? Or will they remember me as someone who tore their parents apart? Margaret took her hands firmly. They'll remember the woman who never stopped loving them. That's what sticks with children. Not the shouting, not the lies. The love. Grace held on to those words like a lifeline. At night, Daniel sat alone in his car outside Clara's house, debating whether to go inside. He could hear her voice even from here, shouting into the phone. He thought of the children asleep in their rooms, of Grace waiting for him with steady faith, and his heart twisted. How long could he straddle the line? How long before the weight of silence crushed him completely? You've seen what lies can do. You've seen how betrayal can turn a home into a battlefield. How love is tested in ways we never imagined. But tell me, if you were in my son's shoes, what would you do? Would you stand by the woman who lied to you for 7 years? Or would you risk everything to stand with the truth? She narrowed her eyes slightly, her tone sharpening like a blade. And tell me this. If a mother can lie about who her child's father is, does she deserve to keep that child? Or should truth always win, no matter the cost? Write your thoughts in the comments, because this isn't just my story anymore. It's a question for all of us. She paused, her voice trembling but resolute. What happens when the truth finally demands its full price? The days after the court hearing settled into a strange rhythm, calm on the surface, but every moment thick with tension, like waiting for a storm to break. Grace kept her house in order. She baked bread, arranged fresh flowers, and polished the silverware, little acts of defiance, proof that Clara's venom couldn't take her dignity. But beneath her calm smile, her heart never stopped pounding. She knew Clara wasn't finished. And she was right.
Late one evening, Grace's phone rang. It was Daniel, his voice weary but urgent. She's losing it, Mom. Clara's furious, angrier than I've ever seen her. She's calling me weak, saying I've humiliated her. She swore she'd never forgive me for letting the DNA test get out. Grace's chest tightened. And the children? Daniel hesitated. She's been short with them. Snapping at David, sending Lily to her room over nothing. They're scared, Mom. They don't understand what's happening. Grace gripped the phone tighter. Then bring them here. Let them breathe. There was a long pause. I will, but if I do, I don't know if I can go back. Grace's voice softened. Maybe that's the choice you've been avoiding, Daniel. Maybe you're not supposed to go back. That weekend, Daniel arrived at Grace's house with 2 suitcases and the children clinging to his sides. David ran into the living room clutching his toy truck, while Lily hurried to the kitchen pulling out her crayons. Their laughter echoed through the house, filling it with life again. Grace turned to Daniel, her eyes wide. You left? He nodded, his shoulders sagging. I couldn't do it anymore. She wouldn't stop screaming. The kids were crying. I had to get them out. Grace laid a hand on his arm.
You did the right thing. But Daniel's face was haunted. I don't know if the court will see it that way. She'll paint me as the one who abandoned her. She'll say I'm unstable. Grace held his gaze firmly. The truth is on your side, Daniel. It always has been. Don't let fear convince you otherwise. Meanwhile, Clara sat alone in her pristine living room, a glass of wine in hand. The silence of the house pressed in on her. No children's laughter, no husband's footsteps, just her own breathing. She stared at the family portraits on the wall. The smiling faces mocked her. Grace had stolen everything. In her fury, she picked up a frame and hurled it across the room. The glass shattered, fragments glittering like ice on the floor. She whispered to herself, "They'll see. They'll all see. I won't let her win." At Grace's house, life took on a new rhythm. David and Lily settled into a peaceful routine. Pancakes in the morning, games in the afternoon, story time at night. Grace reveled in every moment, treasuring their giggles and hugs. One evening, as she tucked Lily into bed, the little girl whispered, "Grandma, is Mommy mad at us?" Grace's throat tightened. "No, sweetheart. Mommy's not mad at you. Grown-ups sometimes make mistakes, but nothing you did made this happen." Lily's eyes shimmered. "I like it here. It feels safe." Grace kissed her forehead, her heart breaking and healing at once. "That's because you are safe, my darling. Always." Daniel, however, struggled. He sat at the kitchen table late into the night, staring at the custody papers. "I don't know if I can do this," he admitted to Grace. "She's ruthless. She'll twist everything. What if the court believes her?" Grace set down her cup of tea, her eyes steady. "Then we don't fight her lies with fear. We fight with truth, Daniel, and no matter how long it takes, truth will stand when lies fall." Daniel rubbed his face, exhaustion etched in every line. "I just want peace." Grace placed her hand over his. "Then you have to fight through the storm to reach it. Hiding won't bring peace. Only standing firm will." But Clara, on the other hand, was unraveling. Her calls to friends grew more frantic, her stories more desperate. "She's poisoning him against me," Clara snapped over the phone. "Grace is manipulating Daniel, turning him into a stranger in his own home." But this time, the responses weren't as sympathetic. "Maybe you should try to work it out," one friend suggested cautiously. Clara slammed the phone down, fury coursing through her. "They don't get it," she muttered. "None of them do." Her reflection in the window stared back at her, distorted by tears. For the first time, Clara felt something she had always denied: fear. Days later, another hearing was scheduled. Grace dressed in her navy dress again, her pearl buttons fastened neatly. She looked in the mirror and saw not just herself, but every battle she had endured. This time, Daniel stood taller beside her. His eyes were tired but resolute. "I'm done letting her control me," he said firmly. "Whatever happens, I'll tell the truth." Grace squeezed his hand. "That's all you need to do." In court, Clara played her part with practiced perfection, trembling voice, glistening eyes, painting herself as the victim of a manipulative mother-in-law. But Daniel's voice cut through it all.
"She lied to me for 7 years, he told the judge, his voice shaking but steady. "She let me believe I was David's father without ever telling me otherwise. My mother didn't create this mess. She exposed it, and I thank her for it, even though it broke me." Clara's face twisted, her mask slipping. "You're ungrateful. After everything I've done." The judge raised a hand sharply. "Mrs. Johnson, enough." Silence fell. And in that silence, Grace felt the balance shift. That evening, Grace sat on her porch, the sunset painting the sky in gold and crimson. She thought of every step that had brought her here: the empty birthday table, the cruel note, the courtroom gasps. She turned her gaze outward, her voice soft but filled with strength. "You've walked this journey with me. You've seen the lies, the betrayals, the fights.
And you stayed with me through every storm. Do you know what that makes you? The hero of this story. Because stories like mine only matter when they're witnessed. You gave me a voice when others tried to silence me. Her lips curved into a faint smile. So don't stop now. Subscribe, share, and stand with me. Because the hardest chapter is still to come. And I promise you, it will test everything we fought for together. Grace awoke the morning of the final hearing with a strange calm in her chest. The nerves that had haunted her in every other courtroom visit were gone, replaced by something steadier. It was not arrogance, not certainty of victory, but acceptance. No matter what the judge ruled, the truth had already spoken. She dressed carefully in her navy dress again, the one Elliot used to say made her look elegant, fastening the pearl buttons with hands that no longer shook. As she looked in the mirror, she whispered to herself, "You've made it this far. Now finish it." The courthouse hummed with tension that morning. Clara arrived first, her cream suit impeccable, her hair sleek, her lipstick perfectly applied. But her eyes betrayed her. They darted around the room nervously, like a fox in a trap. Daniel arrived next, the children clinging to his hands. Grace followed with Margaret and Samuel, their presence like a shield at her side. David spotted Grace first. "Grandma!" he cried, breaking free and running into her arms. Lily followed, her curls bouncing as she wrapped herself around Grace's waist. Clara's smile faltered. For all her rehearsed perfection, she could not control the children's hearts. Inside, the judge called the case to order. Clara's lawyer launched into another speech, weaving words like silk, trying to paint Clara as a loving mother victimized by a meddling mother-in-law. But today the performance rang hollow. Daniel rose to speak. His voice was quiet at first, but steady. "For years, I believed a lie. I thought my family was whole, built on love. Then I discovered the truth, not from Clara, but from my mother. The truth that David is not my biological child." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Clara's face turned pale. Daniel continued, his voice breaking but resolute. "I let him raise him without telling me the truth. She lied to me, to David, to everyone. But despite that, I love that boy. He is my son in every way that matters. And Lily is my daughter. No courtroom, no paper, no lie will change that." He turned, meeting Clara's eyes. "But I cannot live with deception anymore. My mother may not be perfect, but she's honest. She's been my anchor when everything else was falling apart. And I will not allow Clara to cut her out of our lives just to cover her own guilt." Grace's throat tightened, tears burning her eyes. Clara exploded. She shot to her feet, her voice shrill. "He's mine. He is mine. You can't take them from me, Daniel. And you jabbed a finger at Grace. "You've always hated me. From the very beginning, you want to destroy me." The judge's gavel slammed. "Mrs. Johnson, control yourself." But Clara couldn't stop. Years of lies and venom spilled out unchecked. "Yes, I lied. I lied because he never would have stayed if he knew. I gave him a family. I gave him children. And now you're all trying to make me pay for it." Her voice cracked, hysteria rising. "Well, I won't let you. I won't." Silence fell heavy in the room. Clara's mask had shattered. Her polished performance dissolved into raw fury. The judge leaned forward, his tone cold. "Mrs. Johnson, this court does not punish those who tell the truth. It punishes those who deceive. Custody will not be stripped from Mr. Johnson on your accusations alone. This court finds your credibility severely compromised." Clara collapsed back into her chair, her face ashen. Grace exhaled, her hands trembling in her lap. For the first time in months, she felt the tide truly turn. The judge's final ruling came hours later. Daniel retained custody, with Grace granted explicit visitation rights. Clara was warned against further false claims, the weight of the court pressing against her now. The war was not just won, it was ended. Outside the courthouse, the air felt lighter. David and Lily clung to Grace, their laughter unbroken by the storm. Daniel stood beside her, his arm around her shoulders. "I should have listened sooner," he whispered. "I let her lies blind me." Grace shook her head gently. "You listened when it mattered. That's enough." Margaret wrapped an arm around Grace. "You did it, sister. You stood your ground, and the truth stood with you." For the first time in years, Grace allowed herself to smile without weight. But Clara did not go quietly.
That evening, she sat alone in her house, staring at the shards of the family portrait she had once shattered. Her phone buzzed with calls she did not answer, her friend's sympathy dwindling, her reputation tarnished. She had played her part to perfection for years, but one woman's quiet persistence had undone it all.
And in her heart, Clara knew she had lost. Not just custody, not just reputation, but the very trust she had once wielded like a crown. Weeks passed. Life settled into a new rhythm. Daniel split his time with the children, but Grace became their anchor. Pancakes in the mornings, homework in the afternoons, bedtime stories whispered under the soft glow of a lamp. One evening, Lily curled in Grace's lap, her small voice asking, "Grandma, are we happy now?" Grace hugged her tightly, tears filling her eyes. "Yes, sweetheart, we are happy now." David looked up from his toy truck, his voice solemn. "You saved us." Grace's breath caught. She kissed his hair gently. "No, my darling, I only told the truth. The truth saved us." Daniel, too, began to heal. He found a new steadiness in his days, free from Clara's manipulations. One evening, he sat on Grace's porch, the children playing nearby. "I don't know how to thank you," he said quietly. Grace smiled. "You don't need to. Just raise them with love. That's thanks enough." Daniel nodded, his eyes glistening. "I will. I promise." And so, the story that began with an empty birthday table ended with a full one. Grace's dining room once again rang with laughter, the seats no longer empty, but alive with the voices of those she loved. The journey had been brutal. Lies had cut deep. Betrayal had nearly broken her. But in the end, the truth had held. And so had she. Grace turned her gaze outward, her voice carrying not just to our family, but to all those who had listened to her story. "You've walked with me from the start. You sat at that empty table on my 65th birthday. You saw the photos that broke my heart. You held your breath in the courtroom as lies and truth clashed. And you stood by me until the very end." She smiled softly. "That makes you part of the story. Without you, my voice could have been lost in the noise. But you listened. You cared. And because of that, you are a hero in this story too." Her tone grew stronger, filled with gratitude and conviction. So don't let it stop here. If this story touched you, if it made you feel, then share it, like it, subscribe so you never miss the next story of truth over lies. And send it to a friend, because you never know who needs the reminder that even in the darkest storms, the truth can win. Her eyes glistened as she whispered the final words. "Thank you for standing with me. We made it, together." What part of the world are you watching this from? Tell me in the comments, and also don't forget to subscribe and like the video.